Welcome to another episode of Art Pays Me. Today we have Andrea Shang Jackson. This is the second time Andrea's been on the show, and it was nice to catch up on with her. And we talked about her new book. We talked about public art, being a parent, and some collaborations that we're working on. Be on the lookout for that. We're really locking into the basketball and art overlapping thing. And man, Andrea is just one of my favorite people and favorite artists, and so much positivity and joy. And she likes to keep me in line. She can keep me in line because I can get distracted. So she's a great person to know and work with. And I hope you enjoy my second time chatting with Andrea Shang Jackson. Today we have a recurring guest, or a return guest, I should call it, Andrea Shang Jackson of Third Story Workshop. And yeah, it was the last time you were on was 2020, episode 69, actually. And we're now at we're in the 160s, I guess, when this probably comes out. And yeah, 100 episodes later.
Yeah, it's nice to be back. Thanks, Dwayne.
Yeah, thank you for being back. And actually, in that time, I think I basically just reached out to you because I thought you were cool and I didn't really know much about you. I was just interested. And now we've kind of worked together on a bunch of things and done a bunch of stuff together. So a lot of things have changed in those 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah, we've developed a collaborative way, a lot of talking, and yeah, we're friends now. So you're stuck with me.
Yes. Yeah. For the people listening, oh man, I have whined and complained to Andrea quite a bit over the last 2 years, probably now.
But also giving me good news, and we've had lots of great exchanges.
Yes. So one of the things we're bringing Andrea on to talk about right now is Andrea has a new book that just came out, and it's called the just quilting book. Is that the name of it?
It is called Quilting is the main title. Quilting.
Okay.
Subtitle is long. So Quilting, a modern creative journey through an age-old craft.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, tell us about it. What brought this on?
Yeah, so I had written a book that was released in 2019, and it was kind of your conventional quilting book. It was a book of patterns specifically about gemstone quilts, which I was making at the time, kind of near the beginning of my quilting journey. And it was a book of patterns. This is how you make gemstone quilts. Here's 9 different gemstone shapes, how to make them in 4 different sizes, and then here are some projects that you can make. What you would imagine if you think of a quilting book. Quite didactic, prescriptive, here's what you do, here's the colors that I'm using, here's what the outcome is going to look like. And then as I progressed kind of as a quilter and as an artist, I was kind of obsessed with my voice, trying to find my voice. I think a lot of artists, younger artists, are like, what do I have to say, and how do I say it? And I think at the time, Instagram was at a different part of its lifespan at that point, and when an artist has an Instagram page, you expect this cohesive aesthetic voice to come through, and a point of view that was really clear visually. And when I looked at my work, I didn't see that, and eventually I became okay with that. I was like, I just do the things I want to do, and I'm okay with that. And some people could point out that there is continuity between what you do with certain, brighter colors that you use, but also a way you look at things. And as I became more aware of that, I understood my expertise or my knowledge as not really what we're quilting, but how we go about it, how we think about it, why we do it, that sort of thing, rather than what's the thing that I'm making that's right in front of me. And so from there, I'd done a couple of talks about that, and then finding kind of your own unique way of quilting, not way in terms of what you're making, but how it fits into your life. So I think, I'm talking about a quilting audience, like people who are quilters who quilt on a, on a regular basis, or like it's a serious hobby for them. Like they've invested in they've invested some time and energy and probably money into machines and equipment and fabric and things like that. But we do all do it a different way, right? We do it for different reasons. And so for this book, which I pitched to my old publisher, and he found it too niche, was really about like, how do you find a way that's truly yours, and then how does that come out, and how can we kind of experiment with expanding our vocabulary or our way of doing things, as quilters, as artists, as creative people. So I wrote the proposal for my first publisher, and the outcome there. And then a couple years later, there was a Canadian publisher that I connected with, a new craft publisher called 910 Publications out of Vancouver, startup, and like really, really niche publications. Kim, the publisher, was like, the first book they published was about sheep farming in Canada. So like kind of like the supply of like how sheep are raised, and then like how does that become wool that's in the market and things like that.
Cool.
Yeah, really like super niche, right? And so when I handed her this proposal, she was like, "Great, it's so niche, we love it." So and so we proceeded to go ahead with this book, and there's a lot more writing in it than in what you would think of as a typical quilt book. There's 5 essays in the first half, and then 5 what I call quests. I'm in kind of a self-interested way. There was quilts that I wanted to make, but had no real quote unquote reason to make them. Just wanted to try something. And so I kind of bring you along on that journey.
Cool.
And there are kind of like stopping points where you can try the thing and then just like get off the train and be like, I'm done with that. That's cool. Or you can like bring it all the way to a finished quilt if you wanted to. So that's the structure of the book, and that's how it came to be.
That's cool, man. Like so much to unpack there. In that time we first talked, you were kind of saying that you found some joy in teaching. Is that kind of like where this inspiration for the books is coming from? It's like another way to do that.
Yeah, totally. I think that teaching is one of the things that the main reason I teach is to connect with people. And imparting some sort of like tip or technique or whatever is cool and great and all that, but I really like connecting with people. And for me, kind of the ultimate way to teach somebody is to set them off on their own journey. And this is that kind of book, is that like, here is bits of my journey, but like, how does that could that inform the way you think about where you're going, where you've been in quilting, where you're going, and why you do it. And so that, I always think of the work that I do for quilters in terms of like writing patterns and teaching, and is kind of, there's always something I want people to take away from it. And this is the thing I want you to take away from this book, is to like how to design your own creative journey. Direct kind of where you go, but also be open enough that, when something comes your way that's unexpected, you're able to assess, is that actually where I want to go, or do I want to go a different way? Those kinds of things that are a little bit just more loose. And yeah.
Cool. And I mean, we kind of talked about this a bit before. Do you find a particular type of person that likes to work with you, like in terms of, are they trying to become a professional artist / crafter, or are they more hobbyist?
Generally more hobbyists, but also people that would take it quite seriously. So like they would probably, a lot of quilters are hesitant to call themselves artists or professionals, even though they like win awards or make some money from it. But they take it very seriously. It is part of who they are. not central to their identity, but a part of it. And uh, and so I would say that at this point, a lot of people that I teach are interested in kind of going beyond following a pattern, following what's kind of prescribed in a book, and they're like just ready to try something that's their own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and taking it to a different direction, you had an exhibition at the Mirror. I don't know, how do you pronounce that? Mirror?
The mirror,
Mirror?
yeah.
Mirror? Mirror? Uh, how did that come about? Because that looked amazing, and I really wanted to go. Sorry I missed it, but how do things like that come about for you?
This is a really good question, and it will lead to a lot of other things I think that we wanted to discuss anyway in this conversation. And to put it in terms that people will understand, but I don't like using this term, it's networking. It was networking. Um, I know that seems like sometimes it's a dirty word for artists, but it's just keeping channels of communication open. So I met Deborah Carver and Tracy Hain, who are the curators of the gallery at the New York Hotel in downtown Halifax on the waterfront, several years ago. 2000, I want to say, like 2022. So I met them at the time, the gallery, which was Studio 21, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were hosting an event for the opening of the new Simon store in Halifax. So it was just an announcement event. It wasn't like they were just announcing that they were going to open a new store in Halifax. And I got invited to that event because I had been selling on the Simon's website through their Canadian artisan kind of department, which is online only, called Fabrique 1840. And so I was connected with Simon, so I got this invite to this event. There were like lots of other kind of influencers there. Like I'm talking like Instagram influencers, like exactly what you imagine. I was not really that. Only maybe like very niche in the quilting world, but I was an artisan, just connected with the company already. So I met them at this event, and kept in touch with Deborah and Tracy because I knew that they had a connection with Simon's, and I know that when Simon's stores open, they always have local art in their stores. And so I was just kind of kept talking to them here and there every few months and be like, hey, what's going on? Have you heard anything about Simon's? And like, when are they going to do procurement for this, like for their like art pieces in the new store and things like that. So it came around that they were curating at the Muir, at the galleries there, the True Colors Gallery, which is like the hotel gallery for guests. And people come from all over the world to stay there, and so they get to see art. And Deborah and Tracy wanted to do a textile exhibition in kind of like winter going into spring of 2024. And so they invited me because I probably bugged them a whole lot. kept in touch with things that I was doing. And with Elise Campbell, who's a felt artist, and Deanne Fitzpatrick, who's a rug hooker. And they curated this beautiful show. I had never imagined that my work, which is quite modern and in some ways sparse, although it's textiles, so it has a lot of texture to it, next to one of Deanne's intricate, multicolored, hundreds of colors of shades of wool, like one of her framed hook rugs would just go so well together. I didn't. So that is like, I marveled at their curatorial abilities to make that happen. It was really, really cool. Yeah. So that's how that came to be.
Cool. I love like the curation like side of things is something I've been recently just fascinated with, and it really, really is like an art form in of itself. It's fun.
Yeah.
Cool. So one of the things we've been talking about, we've been trying to figure out our own sort of exhibition. There's been a lot of talking, and a lot of brainstorming and thinking and I don't know, hard to unpack, I guess, what what that process is and even somewhat what the goal is and the outcome is.
Mhm.
It's complicated. Um, from your perspective, how do you what do you see it as?
So yeah, we got in touch a little over a year ago to just like sit down and have a talk, have a chat. We had run into each other several times
Yeah,
outside of art
yeah.
at the basketball court. And if you've seen me in real life, any of you who are listening, I'm hardly 5'1". I don't play basketball, uh, but my children do. And Dwayne plays, uh, was a coach, and his daughter plays, and so we kept running into each other, and we're discussing like how do we bring something that's such a big part of our lives, like basketball. I spend so much time thinking about basketball and going and driving to basketball and
Yeah,
whatever. So something that such a takes up such a huge portion of our lives. How do we merge that with our art practices? And so we've just been having chats. And how does it intersect with parenting specifically? I think this particular perspective is is worth discussing. There's so much there as a person who is uh, cheering on your kids, and it's like it's just so much more than that. I didn't know what it would be like to be a parent of kids who are like taking something quite seriously,
yeah,
um, and you know, thinking about what kind of opportunities what are their goals, and how do we get them there, and when do we step back, and when do we like push them a little bit, and like things like all of that kind of that goes with being a parent, just generally, not
yeah,
just even just particularly in basketball or in sport, um, just parenting in general. How does that play into our art practices and how we express ourselves through our art? And so um, I would say up till this point, my kids have played very little role in the content of my art. Um, the way I practice my art is kind of revolves around being, that's just how it fits into my life. There's that aspect of parenting, but also like, but how does it express itself in the art itself? And we haven't really landed on things, but we do know we want to create from that conversation.
yeah,
Um, And so we've been throwing some ideas, but also trying to, gather artists and artwork around this topic but also not really I don't have any experience uh, with curatorial practice or organizing exhibitions. Really, I organize things, events, but
sure.
um, so so we've been talking about that a lot, and kind of are trying to give it some time and some space to figure all that out, but also making space to make the art itself. So yeah, it's been fun, and also nice to have this kind of checkpoint. Like we talk every few weeks or whatever, every month, and um, yeah, I think it's going to be something. I just don't know when or what it will look like, what form it will take.
Yeah,
Kind of exciting in that way.
yeah. I was so I don't know if I've really talked about this as much, but I put a lot of pressure on myself and have a lot of expectations and tend to overcommit sometimes to things. And I'm finally at a place where I'm finding this balance. And these are some of the things Andrea and I have talked about a lot. But like this project has been good in that way for me, where it's giving me that bigger goal to think about. So I feel like I'm pushing myself in some way. But like Andrea's been great to work with because you're like not stressing me out about like this has to be done. Like we're kind of like letting things happen organically, and we're not forcing something that maybe isn't ready to be hatched
Yeah,
to hatch, I guess.
yeah. And I would say that in my experience in the last 5 years since we've spoken on this podcast, that has been one of the biggest lessons that I've learned is to um and I talk about it a little bit in the book. There's a chapter called Surrender.
Mm,
And you just have to be open, have an open hand or open hands to receive and give kind of. I don't know if that makes any sense,
mm,
but like not hold on to it so tightly. Do you know what I mean? Um, and for this whatever this basketball art parenting thing is, it will become something because we keep coming back to it, keep
yeah,
talking about it. We'll make the work. We'll
yeah,
see what connections can be made. But there's just no, like, we haven't pinned down that destination. And I think that's okay. Like, nobody's making us do it. It's just
yeah,
us, right? So, um, and sometimes I do sometimes like putting that artificial pin in that destination just so I know I'm headed somewhere. But
yes,
sometimes it's not really the right move. Like like to be frank, like we applied for funding and we like had a timeline and we had these things and then we didn't get the funding. So we're like, well, do we still continue to push for funding for this event or this exhibition, or should we just like make the work and not worry about the things that are around the art, to
yeah,
how we present it or how we gather people to see it, or how we just make the art. And so hopefully that's what we're going to be doing the next few months, focused
yeah,
on that. Yeah.
yeah. Just focusing on making the work, and that honestly just it feels good. Actually, feels good. Um, on that note, like sort of related, I guess, you've done a lot more public art since I think we last talked.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how much your architectural background like helps with some of that stuff.
Yeah, so I studied architecture in a very long time ago at this point.
Mm,
Um, and in my mind, there is this one particular work. When I was living in Montreal, I was working at the time. I'd finished school. I was interning, maybe. And there was this new building that went up I think it was for the Molson School of Business at Concordia.
mm,
And there was it was, I don't know how many stories, at least 10, maybe more. And there was this huge glass, on the glass up the building, there was this huge photograph of like these leaves that was on the building. And um, and I was just like taken with that. I was like, wow, like a building is it's not just like, it doesn't have to be just a functional building. Like, this is a whole surface for people to make art on and like impact a city. Like,
yeah.
this is before Instagram, like before any sort of like before we disseminated photographs so readily and so ubiquitously in our kind of consciousness. People in that city, in that neighborhood, would experience this piece of art. People going to that school. Um, and I thought that was just really impactful. I had seen other public art around Montreal at the time. It probably had been in place already for several years. This 1% commission,
Mm.
or where every building that had public money in it, 1% of the construction budget was allotted to public art.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I was aware of, you know, cities, and governments that were pushing for that kind of cultural addition, or not addition, but just like furthering culture through the way that they build buildings.
Mm,
So I was just always aware of it, and I was really interested in it, and also really like big things. Like, I make quilts. I don't make like tiny paintings, which would be really fun. But
mhm.
also, I like making big work because it engages the body in a different way when you're looking at it. Um, So anyway, I always had this in the back of my head, and as I started to kind of work in the quilting and art in this particular way, I had always wanted to see what it would be like to make a work, or to how we perceive textile art is generally very tied to the domestic sphere. So we think of home when we think of textiles, right? Textiles are really close to our bodies. We sleep under them. We sleep on them. We have our like most intimate moments like with textiles.
Yeah.
And when you think of a quilt, you think of family a lot of the time.
Mm.
Grandmothers, aunts, moms, those kinds of associations. And I was wondering, and I wondered this frequently, like how can textile art exist in the public sphere? They can be really delicate, right? We don't have a huge textile history in that textiles disintegrate. So people use them and then they fade away.
Yeah.
It's not like a stone monument. It's like something that will just eventually disappear.
Yeah.
And so how do we have them in the public without them like falling apart? And so I've kind of been on this journey to figure out like how do we represent them, because it does have to, there's just a bit of a translation between what a textile actually literally is, like cloth, and how you can actually exist in a public space. That's not to say that we can't have large textile art in public spaces, but will they last for a really long time? Those kinds of things. Anyway, so I was always looking for an opportunity to be able to explore that idea of textiles in public space. And so, I've kept my eye on like requests for qualifications and proposals for public pieces that seem to fit what was the questions that I was asking.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the first one would be the parkade on Summer Street in Halifax for the QE2 hospital. It was finished in 2022, and it features graphics that I designed that are all based in textile arts. So there's quilting, there's beading, there's rug hooking, weaving, embroidery, probably missing one. But it was actually, was a topic of the artwork, but the main work of that piece was finding a way to represent those art forms, those crafts, in a in an honoring and respectful way. I knew they have a long history in this province. And that's what I pitched. Naively, I pitched to the province. I was like, okay, I'd like to represent different craft traditions from all over Nova Scotia on this building. And they're like, cool, great. You get the contract. And then I was like, oh no, like how do I do this without appropriating other people's cultures? Because this is not rug hooking isn't part of my cultural background, nor is beading, or so I was like, it really became a project about how to tell stories respectfully, and that's where the work of the project was. It wasn't in the producing the artwork. It wasn't in coming up with the idea. It was really in like, how do I do this properly? And so yeah, that was a really, really rewarding, challenging project because of that. And I was able to connect with individuals from different communities with deep histories and deep stories from some of them are practicing craftspeople. Some of them are connected to traditions of particular crafts in Nova Scotia, and talked about that with them. I did interviews. So I've basically landed on I saw my role as a documentarian. I was taking in these stories and then representing them, and not through film or podcast or something like that, but through the visual arts. And yeah, I looked at journalistic and like documentary making ethics a little bit, and used those as frameworks for what I was doing.
Cool. Cool. That's really interesting, actually. Like it's not your you're reflecting these experiences. Like, I mean, obviously your own, you can't help but have your own interference into it because it's your work. But at the to the best of your ability, you're not saying this is mine. Boom. It's like bringing these people in, reflecting their story. Yeah, that's what I've been doing some public work too, and I found that was the approach I like to take too. Uh, eh, it's for them ultimately.
Yeah, exactly. I was just writing up another proposal yesterday,
Hmm.
and I literally wrote like public art belongs to the community that it's in.
Yeah,
Like it doesn't belong to me. Like I am a part of it and I make it come to life in a certain way. But they live with it. Like people, like whoever's in this milieu in this community lives with this, and it should reflect them, and it also maybe reflects what they see in the future for their community, kind of an aspirational. Um, yeah, so I totally agree that it's not. It's we're kind of facilitators in a certain way.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So last time we were doing this, it was 2020. Lots was happening in the society. Now lots is happening again. Uh, I'm curious. Like one of the things about textile based work is the gendered aspect of it and how that sometimes leads to, well, a lot of times leads to it not getting as much respect as maybe it should. I was going to ask you if that has changed since then, but like with the way things are also going culturally, maybe they took a step back. I don't know.
It definitely has changed in the last 5 years, more than that. It was on its way to change when I was talking to you last in the podcast. And I think curators of major institutions have paid attention to textiles um, in a new way in the last, let's say, decade. Um, and so there are numbers. There's still kind of appalling numbers as
Mm.
to what percentage of female artists make up a collection of major institutions, or how much they are featured in major exhibitions, how they're represented in leadership and things like that. Um, but it has shifted, and I think people are a lot more open to textiles as a unfortunately using this word, I don't like using this word, like a legitimate art form, or like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, I I have since stepped away from not debating, but thinking too hard about what the word craft or crafts or art means, because like I consider it all art, and like it doesn't matter to me anymore. As
Yeah.
a person, as an artist, it doesn't matter to me. As you know, if I'm looking at an institution and its values, I care about it in that respect.
Yeah.
But as an individual, I'm like, I just make stuff, and I create things.
Yeah.
I don't really care what category you want to put it in.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I think with with textiles being opened up into fine art institutions, let's say, um, I hope we see a broadening of the way people collect. Um, I think there's like more female collectors out there, which is
Seems to be. Yeah.
cool. And then um, I think a lot about unknown makers. So things that we see at like a history museum or like a folk art museum,
Hmm.
often those things are tied to, maybe were often made by women, just
Hmm. Yeah.
unnamed people, not just women, just generally like, ex like some fishermen on the like in this region, for example, maybe just like had this hobby of creating things out of driftwood, and
Yeah.
that's art. Does it belong? Where does it belong? And who owns it? Is it on a whole other kettle of fish?
Hmm. Hmm.
um, where does it belong? Does it belong in an institution? Does it belong on my mantle? Does it belong like?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's all these questions that I find very interesting. There's a part in the book where I talk about quilts as folk art, and um, and and I think quilting squarely fits into a folk art like definition of, people don't necessarily learn it in the academy, they don't learn it at university.
Yeah.
There's a lot of exchange of information, like kind of horizontally between people who practice it, and it's kind of part of the everyday. And and I think that's legitimate art. It's a great way to practice creativity and art and creating in any kind of circumstance, whether you were a capital A artist or you're, back in the 1800s, you were a farmer's wife and you had a few minutes in the day to put some pieces of fabric together, not because you were like being quote unquote creative. It wasn't like your creative time. You were trying to keep your kids warm,
Yeah.
but it is an act of creation. And so, yeah, so there's just so many ways to practice art and to quilt. And I'm glad that it's getting, textiles are getting more recognition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny. I think the more and more I think about it too, like the whole label thing is something that I'm moving away from. I still worry from a commercial standpoint how I approach people to say what it is I actually do. But at the end of the day, like the more I try to box myself in, the more stressed I get and stifled I get. And like, I'm like you, like I'm now thinking about for our project, should I sew something just because? And something you said to me when we were in one of our chats was interesting about like there are the technical there are the specific techniques where you could see, oh, someone has done things a certain way, it's been crafted at a certain level. But then when you're making an art piece, you don't necessarily need to follow those things. Like the quality of the craft can go out the window to for the sake of expression to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So I was thinking like, yeah, I'm not great at sewing, but that doesn't matter, I guess, in this case. Why don't I just make something and the expression of what I'm trying to get across is more important there.
Yeah, let me give you a window into the world of quilting
Okay.
and and how craftsmanship is kind of viewed in it. Um, so most, like a lot of traditional craft quilt shows. So a quilt, okay, let me explain what a quilt show is. It's an event, usually a few days, where
Hmm.
quilts are displayed. It can be any number of quilts, like maybe at a county fair or in a bigger kind of an event that I go to on a semi-regular basis. There's like hundreds of quilts that are hung to showcase quilting, quilters, and quilters' work. And then there's like events like workshops and lectures that kind of go alongside it. And then these quilts, though, they get judged. So I'm at like you. This is not something you would see in an art gallery where you're judged on like they're compared to each other, and then somebody wins. Like most art galleries don't have that kind of.
Mm.
Yeah, some do. Sometimes there are prizes for art and things like that. But like these quilt shows have winners in certain
Okay.
categories, and the tradition of quilt judging, there's like a whole process to become a certified judge, and a lot of it comes down to technique, how you've executed your quilt. Like, are the
Mm.
stitches a certain like length? Is this neatly done? Is the binding neatly done? Um, there's some design elements too, like how does the color affect it? How does the quilting affect it? And like things like that. Um, and and often the most technical quilt, the most laborious quilt that you can imagine is the one that wins the show
Mm.
because it's just so impressive in its technique.
Yeah.
And like you could see that like somebody has spent clearly hundreds, maybe thousands of hours on this piece of work,
Yeah.
and um should win something or
Yeah. Yeah.
something
Yeah. Yeah.
because
There should be something
yeah,
to show for.
yeah, and it's like executed flawlessly.
Yeah.
I was at the quilting conference that I mentioned, QuiltCon, which is it's a particularly modern show and it's international. I was at that last month, and the keynote speaker, Tara Fana, mentioned that when she started quilting as a young person in, I don't remember, whatever, however many years ago, she would enter these quilt shows. She was an artist, like she was trained as an artist, and she found this medium. Like, this is my medium. It's going to be quilting. So she entered her quilting shows, you know, was masterfully thinking about color and like design and things like that, and composition. Yeah. And then the judges' comments would come back to her, and they would all be about technique. Right? And so this was so interesting what she said. She was like, it's all women. I think most of the judges are women too. It's like, to show up and be noticed or to be recognized, a woman needs to be flawless. Right? And I was like, oh, damn. Yikes, right? Yeah. And so, yeah, I've been pondering that.
That's very profound. There's a lot to unpack in that. Wow. Because, I mean, too, like, if you're thinking about it from its practical sense, if a quilt falls apart, then that maybe reflects poorly on the woman's ability to take care of her home or something like that.
Yeah.
So that's passed down to the art side of things in a way that.
Yeah, it's like there's so many layers there, right? And like, if you think about the way when you think of like I don't know, if you even think about influencers today, right? That is you project perfection.
Absolutely.
I mean, there are people that also want to be real. There's also, so we can have a whole other discussion about authenticity on those platforms, but that rings true. And it's not just that society demands that of us. We've been conditioned to demand that of ourselves, probably a lot too. So it's just like, wow, there's so much there. We don't have to get into it.
That was deep. That was deep. So let's take it back to the book. How do people get your book?
Okay, so my book. So it is, because it is a tiny like publisher in Vancouver, we don't have U.S. distribution yet. So you can buy it from my website, thirdstoryworkshop.com, or you can buy it from 910 Publications. There are lots of quilt stores across Canada and a couple in the U.S. that carry the book as well. So yeah, most directly you can buy from me. If you order, it's on Amazon, you can order it, but like the shipping date's not till October, and we don't really have control over any of that. So yeah. So if you want a signed copy, especially, you can get one from me or from 910 Publications.
Nice. Yeah, and I did that myself. So folks, please buy the book from, one of the sources Andrea said.
Yeah. The one locally, I forgot to mention, Patch Halifax has it. Patch, on Agricola Street. So you can also get it here, support a local business as well.
Okay. And some behind the scenes, Andrea and I were supposed to do this interview in my studio, but I can't seem to get my shit together. So I would have been able to get my copy of the book to show you guys, but
it's okay. You'll get it in your hands soon.
I gotta be better. All right. So Andrea, how can people find you online? And if there's anything you want to promote, let us know.
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram at Third Story Workshop. So it's the numeral 3 RD Story Workshop, or my website is thirdstoryworkshop.com. There is a couple of, once you get to my website, there's kind of branches that you can branch off into, and one of them is fully about the Parkade project. So if you want to dig deep into that, there's like it's almost like an online publication. There's like audio interviews and a lot of information and photographs and video about that project there.
Sweet. All right. Andrea, thanks again for jumping on Art Pays Me. And we'll be chatting soon, I'm sure.
Yep, we will. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to Art Pays Me. Hit me up on socials at Art Pays Me pretty much everywhere, and let me know what you think. I love connecting with listeners. If you're an artist looking for clothes that speak to the creative lifestyle, check out artpaysme.com.
Lame